Welcome to Orange County Power Players, where we spotlight the personal, professional, and financial success stories of OC's top leaders. Here's your host, Danny Flores.
Welcome back to OC Power Players, where I interview some of the most successful people in Orange County. I'm your host, Danny Flores, and today our honored guest is John Szeder, zooming in from Tustin. John is a mentor and innovator with 30 years of professional experience in consumer products. Presently, the VP of Engineering for Game Data Pros, the leading revenue optimization company for AAA games. John has also designed award-winning indie games and provided executive consulting for many Fortune 500 companies, including Samsung, Blizzard, and the Clorox Corporation. Welcome, John.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So give us a little bit, an idea, a snapshot of what you do and how you got there.
Yeah, I guess it all goes back to games for me, right? You know, we've been doing video games for a little while, and it's something that I've always been really excited about since being a little kid, having an early home computer and growing up with it, and then one day realizing, hey, people write software on these things and they make little programs to do stuff, and then pursuing that, you know, at a university level to get a degree in computer science, and then one day coming to the realization that, you know, this is fun and I could probably wind up working in games. So I decided to sit down and have spent a 2-week project building a little game. It was modeled after one of my favorite games on the old Commodore 64. And I put it in an old store for the compact iPack, like these little handheld pocket PC devices. Somebody gave it a 5-star review and said, this reminded me of Gateway to AppShy. And I'm like, hey, I could design a game that got a good review from somebody who recognized what I was trying to do here. I think I want to do this for the rest of my life, and that's what got the ball rolling.
Well, you gotta love what you do, and if you have fun creating games, and then you like playing the games, why not, right?
Exactly.
Now, there's a lot of competition in this area. What makes you stand above the rest?
That's an excellent question. You know, taking a look at what's been happening in the tech space, and also in particular with games, with full-time employees and contractors, there's been a remarkable staff recession in the games industry. 1 in every 4 people in the games industry has lost their job in the past 2.5 years due to a combination of macroeconomics and other things. So how do you stay competitive, and how do you stay relevant in that world? I would say part of the success is a network, and making sure that you know the right people, and also, you know, being very good and being very conversant as to what the patterns are and what the trends are. You know, pattern recognition is a valuable skill. And a lot of the time in my career, I was between 3 and 7 years too early for something to be relevant to consumers, and spending the time, you know, building up those chops and learning those important things. So when the marketplace connects and the timing for something happens, you know, that's the reason why I you know, sort of stay where I am on the curve. So, you know, lifetime love of learning and translating that into building stuff that matters for marketplaces that become successful, I guess, is kind of the secret.
What's the best way to learn to recognize patterns?
That's a great question. I don't know that I did something consciously, but I took a lot of math and puzzle competitions when I was a kid. People ask me, what's the biggest secret or the biggest thing I could do if I want my kids to do what your kids do? You know, I meet a lot of sports parents and like kids that play sports, and they say, hey, my kids are interested in doing what you're doing. What do I have to do? And I tell them, be good at math. And then they make a face at me. You know, my degree is computer science and an honors in mathematics. And, you know, sitting down and seeing math patterns and understanding there's rules for systems and following those, and then eventually you just look at stuff and say, okay, here's 3 things that are happening, and the logical conclusion is this. Right. And, you know, you just see it. I've had some people that I've worked with who are game designers who have been very good at predicting what games will be popular in 3 years' time. I'm not quite at that level of skill for a particular game, but, you know, that's the same thing. They recognize patterns. They see stuff that people are playing. They see what they're buying, and they could take a look and extrapolate from that.
Well, that's really interesting, especially understanding that, so you can push in that direction and be right there when it kind of becomes popular, that It's your game that's becoming popular.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, how has AI contributed to the industry?
So a lot of people are approaching it with fear. The AI is going to come and take my job as a creative person. But the automobile affected saddle makers, but didn't affect people who needed to get from point A to point B. Right. So if you are focusing on doing your job without considering the arrival of the automobile and you're a saddle maker, you're going to be in trouble. But if you embrace the tools and understand that you can supplement them to do what you do, then I would say that that's probably much more valuable. And I've seen that people kind of fall into those two camps. I don't like this. I want to avoid it. There's creativity things and it's ruining creative jobs versus I can be better as a creative person if I use these tools. And you gotta choose the latter to be successful in the long term.
Right, right. I think I kind of heard people say that AI is not going to take your job if you learn to use it.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to make you even more valuable because you're more productive with AI. It just saves so much time. Your productivity will just shoot through the roof, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what comes easy to you that others might find difficult?
I think getting to a point where I'm ready to take action at something and making a decision to chase something. Right. I was one of the first 10 mobile game developers in North America in the year 2000, 8 years before the iPhone came out. I recognize there's going to be interesting opportunities, and it's a great way to get your foot in the door into building content in a marketplace that was emerging. So seeing an early pattern of something and making a leap towards it. I have a tendency to make predictions about some of the stuff on LinkedIn, and right now there's three different emerging markets that are all competing for people's attention. There's the generative AI stuff that's over here, and then you have augmented reality, like squarely in the middle, and then you have another sort of space which is people who are innovating in gesture technology and playing around with new things. There's like a new kids console that came out at Christmas that a bunch of people were excited about. I forget the name of it, like Nex, I think, or something like that. Looks really cool, and it's a neat little thing. But the big question is what can you do that is unique to one of those spaces to be successful and build something that's awesome for people?
Now, when you guys develop all of this, is this targeting for children or adults as well?
Whatever you do, you have to pick your customer, right? Sometimes you want to target kids. There's people out there, like the Age of Learning company that have a great educational product that's for kids. There's people that are out there that are building VR applications and AR applications that are targeting prosumers and people in city environments. And that makes sense for them. Understanding who your customer is and not saying, I read a bunch of game pitches as part of a competition, and people said our target demographic is men and women from 18 to 45. It's like, well, that's not a target demographic. That's saying you don't have a customer or you don't know who your customer is, right? You're going to have to want to pick a particular thing. It's like, here's people who like sports, or, here's women who live in cities, or, here's kids between the ages of 11 and 13 who are looking for something that is comparable to these three Roblox games. So it's understanding what your customer needs and wants are, and targeting that very narrow segment as opposed to saying my product is for everybody, because that's never true.
So let's just say, hypothetically speaking, that you do have a target as you're developing these for, I don't know, like you said, 11 to 15 years old or something like that. So you capture them, you're able to sell them the product. That's great. You have them engaged as a customer. So the question is, how do you keep them as a customer as they grow up and their desires change? Can you make that they jump from one to the next and keep them as a lifetime customer?
Mm-hmm. That gets challenging. There's two ways you can do that. You can say, yes, I can figure out what the extension of that product is, assuming that you have the resources to build that completely different business. I do believe Age of Learning, which has, ABC Mouse, which is a great little kids product. They have something called Adventure Academy, which is a graduation product like that, right? Roblox is going through this right now because they engage with so many young people. And I think they have a number of mature products, which is, movies that have come out that are appealing to the demographic of people who played this game 10 years ago as they aged up with the community. Or you can just embrace what you are and say, I'm not interested. You know, like Leapfrog Learning Company, maybe a bad example because they're not here anymore, but they focused on, you know, preschool products, and they were very tightly focused on that, and they didn't have a second product. Right? You know, specialize and say, I'm going to focus on this, and I understand that I have 3 years with this customer, and then just embrace it, or decide that you're going to build a second business, which is almost as complicated as building your first one, and there's no guarantee that it will be successful.
Right. So then so that kind of makes sense if you specialize, and if you specialize, so you have kids outgrowing it, but you have kids also growing into it at the same time.
Mhm.
Right. So then the
That's
other
right.
question would be, if that's your game plan, you almost have to also understand how the population is growing. What does your incoming group look like, and how big is that? Is it growing or is it shrinking? Because then you would have to shift based on that.
Yeah. Year over year, the numbers are not going to change that much, but you do have to look at the trends and say, okay, is this a business that's going away? Kind of like the GameStop in particular. You know, they have a retail footprint for selling games in a world where everybody gets their games through their phones or downloaded from the cloud. Right? They're still here today, but where is GameStop going to be in 20 years? You have decreasing sales as there's less and less foot traffic for people who are just getting their stuff on demand from the cloud. So they have to do something about it in 20 years. Nothing really that they can do about it next year.
Almost like the Blockbuster to Netflix story.
Exactly. Right? The same thing.
Mm-hmm. Where we know Blockbuster because we use Blockbuster, but
yeah, that's right.
Right. Mm-hmm. The younger generation might only have heard of the story. We lived it. And mm-hmm. If you know the story and how Netflix couldn't get Blockbuster to buy them, and that was one of the biggest mistakes that they made. And then we know the rest of the story.
Yeah. It's a fascinating generational thing to explain how you used to rent movies. Now it's you push a button on the TV remote, click rent, and you watch the show. Back then, it was a little bit more of an ordeal. You had to get in the car, go watch a movie, and before the DVD, even when you're done with watching it, you had to rewind the tape. Tell the kids these days to just watch the looks on their face, and they're like, "Wow, it's crazy."
Yeah, it's mm-hmm. like a button, exactly. Like there's not even, you don't even get the disc from Netflix anymore. It's just everything's streamed. That's crazy. I mean, for me, it's like, wow, I would never have imagined that it would go from the VCR to what it is now.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, somebody's listening to us and wants to get into business, do what you do. What do you think is a good path to get into?
There's two words. I'll say it because I give a lecture to people in universities and a number of boot camps who are learning to be software developers. I always tell people, how do you get into games? 2 words: build something, right? You want to show that you can finish a product. You want to show that you can design something and get it into the hands of people. Finishing a product is so important. There's so many people that want to work in games who've got this gigantic pile of half-finished projects. And 90% of the work in a game happens when you are 90% done. That last 10% takes all of your effort, and it's that polishing and making sure that something's good enough to get in the hands of the hands of a player. That's the important part that most people are not excellent at. So I always tell people, find a way to build something. If you have a design and an idea, find some interns or some college kids or some folks who are willing to take your idea and build it for you and say, look, this is my design. Here's the team that built it. That's what I did so many years ago. And the best thing to do, when even for myself and for people who are looking at incoming people who want to work in the industry, is to say, what have you done? What have you built? Show me some stuff. And you can take a look at the proof is in the pudding, right? And if you are passionate enough to finish your project and take it over the finish line, there will be a role for you somewhere eventually.
And so some of these kids that may be listening, or the parents, and that they say, okay, yeah, I like that. I like the idea, but where do I start? I don't know anything about writing code or anything like that. How can they start learning that and knowing how to put something together?
I got started myself with the little blue spiral bound handbook that came with the Commodore 64. I opened it up and it had a programming language. Nowadays, it's almost as simple You can go to ChatGPT and say, I want to make a tic-tac-toe game and run it in the browser, and it will spit out the code for you. It won't be amazing, but it will be a starting point, right? I did that recently. There were 3 things in it that I would say are pretty serious issues that you'd want to fix, but you can iterate on that. So you could learn to program. You could find somebody who's, someone that's willing to work with you to build things for you, or you could use generative AI technologies to generate the code for you, which is option number 3. There are people as software professionals who are getting self-taught using AI assistants and AI tools to become software developers. And the actual work of writing code is under a transformative change, and it's going to look very different today than it did 5 years ago. 10 years ago, we were using IDEs and had a very set of tools, integrated development environments, but those didn't exist or existed very poorly 2 decades before that. And 2 decades before that, we were punching holes in cards and feeding them into a machine. The development tools of today are going to look like those punch cards by the time we get to 2035, right? And so it's going to be an interesting transition. We look back and say, wow, we used to do this all by hand.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's amazing how fast technology is moving and how it's changing the way we do things. Yes. And so what has been one of your biggest challenges in your career that you had to overcome?
Patience. The serenity prayer, give me the strength to solve the problems I can, the patience to endure the things I can't change, and the wisdom to know which is which, right? I would say certainly for the first 15 years of my career, whenever you take a look, strength, patience, or wisdom, I chose strength. I would just try to plow through everything. And, it's taken me a while to develop patience, because as somebody who has, good pattern recognition skills and seeing what's happening and what's about to happen in the marketplace, you want to take advantage of it right now. And sometimes you're 5 years early, or sometimes you're pushing on it too hard, and things don't happen at the pace that you want. Sometimes you got to let things sort of catch up and let the marketplace emerge, or wait for emerge, or let the marketplace show up when it does. And it's that patience that has been the hardest thing for me.
Right. I think as we get older, we learn that, right? When we're young.
It's a natural one. Yeah.
Wait.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well,
exactly right.
Things are going really well for you in your career, and congratulations on that. There's people in the industry and in many different industries that look outside of their industries to try to create some passive income. And that way they can help set themselves up for retirement, or potentially just an additional income stream that won't take too much of the time.
Yes.
Family benefits, or college tuition, or just stuff, right? Life stuff. What are your thoughts on that?
I do that myself. I am a career coach for a number of engineering leaders who I've connected with, who are looking for assistance. I will say, I'm not a successful marketer. I've not been able to market that business very well, but I've helped a lot of people get promotions, or get raises, or succeed in achieving career goals that they've missed before. And that's something that I do as a side hobby. And the frequency varies. Sometimes the person pays for it, sometimes their employer pays for the mentorship, and it's been very valuable. I think more and more people are realizing that their careers are difficult to navigate, and having the advice of someone who's external to that. 50% of it is almost basic psychology, and 50% of it is, I've been there before, and here's the things that you're not thinking about that you need to think about, and giving people homework exercises and plans to improve, and holding them accountable to it, right? Which is, I think, the last and biggest part of that. So I've discovered that's kind of a fun thing to do, and it's really helpful for the people that I've assisted.
Yeah, even Kobe Bryant needed a coach. I mean, all the successful people, Tony Robbins, everybody has coaches at every level, because they can see something that maybe you can't, and that's what helps elevate you.
Yeah. The vast majority of incredibly successful people all have coaches. Many of them have written books. Speaking of, athletes, there's a great book called Relentless, which talks about coaching. My son, is a left-handed pitcher, played a lot of youth baseball. We did a lot of reading on how do you succeed in that field? What are the things that you can do to develop? What is the mindset approach that you need for that? He's aged out of baseball, but he's finishing school, and is now a first time founder for his own little company here in he's going to Cal State Fullerton, and has got a little business that's doing well, better than my first business, actually. And it's cool to see that, but a lot of it is taking the lessons from coaches for highly performant athletes and pro stars to get to that point. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because he talks a lot about it on social media, and he always connects the dots back to his roots to baseball training.
Yeah, it's the mindset that it builds and the discipline that you have to stay consistent and not giving up. Just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, no matter how many no's you get.
Yeah.
You just got to keep going, because you have to think, the more no's I get, the closer I get to that one yes that I'm looking for. Yes. So as we wrap up our interview, what does 2025 look like for you?
2025 is for me, I'm looking at the predictions I've made over the handful of years for emerging marketplaces, and I'm watching to see some of them come true. Sorry. Web3 technologies and all the crypto stuff is a 2030 success. In the next 2 years, we're going to see a massive change in the way that people build tools with generative AI. And also we're looking for a next generation AR device that's going to replace your phone. Right? When's that going to arrive? I don't know, but history has shown us that device is coming the same way that this phone replaced the smartphone, which replaced, a handful of other devices that people used to have at all times. And, it's overdue at this point. The phone that will replace your device will have a lot of AR technology. Will it be glasses? Will it be a wrist thing? We don't know yet, but it's on its way. Right. And so I'm watching for what the early signs for what the device is and when it's going to get here, and playing around with the different tools and technologies to be prepared for it.
So we won't be carrying cell phones in our pockets anymore. Maybe the glasses or something like that, because the glasses are here already, right?
They are here. There's reasons why they are not mass market accessible, related to battery power and form factor and utility. Eventually, someone's going to line up everything and get perfect consumer product market fit. And then at some point, we're going to stop carrying a phone around. It may just be a little device that has a large battery that's wired to your phone, replicate some of the same features, but we're not going to be looking at those screens and swiping through and tapping things anymore.
Interesting. You heard it first here at OC Power Players. Let's see, John. Well, John, thanks so much for sharing your insights and all these tips and these new products that we can just see how they evolve and they come to life. If somebody is listening to us and they'd like to get a hold of you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
LinkedIn is probably the best way. Pretty active presence there, and following that, I think the Twitter account X, as it's called now. Those are the two places I correspond with people the most, but LinkedIn is the easiest, I think. Always happy to take a connection that says, hey, let's connect and do something, provided it just doesn't include like a flat Calendly link saying, hi there for connecting, thanks. Let's set up a 30-minute meeting to talk. Tell me why.
Right. No. Okay. Well, then, once again, John, thanks so much for coming on and providing us such good information. And to our guests, please go to ocpowerplayers.com and follow us on your favorite channel.
Thanks for listening to Orange County Power Players. Want to share your success story? Apply to be a guest at ocpowerplayers.com/guest.